Welcome to the Business of Government Hour TV, a video companion to our flagship radio program. I'm Michael Keegan, your host. Each week, government executives and thought leaders join me for an informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. These individuals are truly changing the way government does business. How is the National Technical Information Service, NTIS, helping to advance federal data priorities? And what does NTIS do to deliver value to federal agencies? I'll explore these questions and so much more with its director, Avi Bender. Take a look and take a listen. Download the entire interview at Podcast One, iTunes, and at businessofgovernment.org. So, Avi, would you provide us with an overview of the mission and history of the U.S. Department of Commerce's National Technical Information Service, NTIS? How has its mission evolved to date?
Well, first of all, we go back to 1945 under the Truman administration. People don't know about that. It's pretty amazing. Under that time, it was called the Publication Board, and the responsibilities were pretty much the same as what they are now, and that was to be a clearinghouse for engineering, scientific, and business information for the government, for all the agencies in the United States. Now, the mission, of course, has changed over the years with the onset of the Internet. We're also responsible for managing the limited access death master file for the Social Security Administration, managing a database for the Drug Enforcement Agency on opioid substances and controlled substances. And we continue to evolve these types, what I would call subscription services. But in the last couple of years, there have been a tremendous change in the marketplace with respect to big data. And at that point in time, Commerce changed our mission in 2016 to focus on big data and specifically to deliver greater value and insights to federal agencies on all those data to help them with driving economic growth and also to become much more effective and efficient in how they run their operations. So that's really been our new mission starting since 2016. We're off and running, and lots of good things are happening.
I'd like to transition to your specific role. Would you tell us more about your duties and responsibilities as the director of NTIS, and how does it support the overall mission of the department?
Right. So I was hired in 2016 from the U.S. Census Bureau. My role is really to establish the overall strategy and the execution of that strategy to really move us into this digital data age in order to be able to deliver the valuable services that agencies need to solve mission-critical data problems. That's sort of my role. It fits very well within the Department of Commerce because Commerce as an agency for a long time has really been a big data organization with the likes of the Census Bureau, USPTO, NOAA. So our mission fits really very nicely within that, specifically because we're an enabler from a business perspective, not only to the Department of Commerce, but actually across other federal agencies. And again, we do all of this with the partners that we have in place.
So, regarding your duties and responsibilities, what would you say are your top management challenges, and how have you sought to address those challenges?
I think the biggest issue that I face is aligning strategy with execution. We have a good strategy of how to leverage this authority that we have to deliver valuable data services to federal agencies in conjunctions with our private sector partners. But in order to do that, you have to establish an operating model that is somewhat unique from anything that's been done before, and we may examine that a little bit later in our conversation. But that's really a relentless focus and execution. The other area is that we need to hire some key people. Now, although we're not a professional services model per se, we don't need to hire lots of people, but we do need to have a few individuals with a good mix of skills, as I mentioned, in project management, program development, data science. They have to be individuals with a passion, and they have to be individuals who are excited about not just doing a job, but delivering on a higher authority in a sort of a bigger mission. So that's an area that we continue to work on.
Getting insights into your leadership philosophy, would you outline for me some of your key leadership principles and what makes an effective leader?
Right. I never went to any organization thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to be a leader. What is my philosophy? I think some of that you kind of hone in over time. And so I wanted to examine the pattern of where I've had successes. Mm-hmm. And the pattern has been that for both my philosophy and principles, you really need to operate with a set of values that include honesty and integrity. And as I mentioned before, a passion to achieve a higher purpose. That's a philosophy that I have. That is a philosophy that I, as a leader, hope to instill in the people that work for me. And I believe that effective leaders need to really outline a vision. They need to inspire others to be able to take that journey with them. Sometimes easier said than done. I believe that leaders need to be open-minded. They have to be good listeners, and they have to be humble. Because you're a leader, an appointed leader within an organization, does not mean that you're all-knowing.
Data is a strategic priority and resource for the federal government, and leveraging data and making it work for the agency is key to helping them meet their mission. And NTIS has a real role in that. So I'd like to step back and kind of understand your strategic vision, which you kind of hinted at in the previous segment. But what are your strategic priorities too?
The strategic priority is actually really important because this is what drives us. Sure. To net it out, every day when we do anything, we have to ask the basic question. Through our new mission established in 2016, are we actually helping agencies drive economic growth through data? Are we helping agencies become more effective and efficient organizations through data? Are we helping organizations leverage data to improve their supply chains to become more effective and efficient? So everything that we do really has to do around strategic outcomes. So our priorities are really driven by that. And our delivery model, as I mentioned, is really to help agencies achieve capacity to scale through the joint venture partnerships that we have that I'll describe shortly. Because many organizations have priorities. They have mission-critical priorities, but simply they don't have the skills, they don't have the resources, they may not have the various tools, and frankly, acquiring those resources and skills is very time-consuming, and time is of the essence.
Would you tell us more about how your mission relates to the cross-agency priority or CAP goal of leveraging data as a strategic asset?
So when the various CAP goals came out, I paid lots of attention to that because that clearly is what we need to be focused on. And then when I saw the specific CAP goal on data, I said, "Wow, we are this is our sweet spot. This is where we can really have an impact. We are really such an important instrument for the rest of the federal government that people need to be aware of." So. Net, the CAP goal is directly aligned, and we support that goal because we are helping agencies leverage data as a strategic asset, not just with a set of desirements, but actually very specific outcomes and delivering results. And I'll describe some of those a little bit later. So again, many of the guiding principles of the CAP goals are very much in sync, and we're totally in support of that for both Commerce and other federal agencies.
Speaking of the federal enterprise, whether it's your department or federal agencies in general, what are some of the common federal IT and data operational challenges facing agencies in these areas, and what are the current? Why are the current data supply chains not terribly effective?
I think part of the reason that is that, so first of all agencies have very common issues from a functional and a technical perspective. Okay. So the functional and the technical perspective is they're having difficulties, as I mentioned before, in data collection, processing, dissemination, analytics, dissemination, and so right. So those are the common areas, and what has caused that is the lack of metadata standards, lack of interoperability. Now let's just dive a little bit into this. Think about these 4 or 3 chevrons that I've just described and visualize them. So agencies collect data. Agencies are in the data business whether they know it or not, but they collect data, they process data, they disseminate, analyze data. Let's just look at collect. Every agency has multiple applications, multiple business processes, multiple technologies that collect data, and frankly, they do it differently. That's why you hear about the fact that we don't have metadata standards. Well, that is the beginning of the key contribution of why there are issues with data interoperability. If you do not collect data in a highly standardized way, then you will have downstream impacts. What I've just described to you are really the functional and technical issues. Those have serious implications for business outcome. So some of the challenges in the business outcomes that agencies have include making evidence-based decision-making, transforming business operations, dealing with fraud detection, improving human resource management, dealing with improper payments, improving internal controls, improving citizen services, establishing pricing equity, dealing with export-imports, dealing with food and drug safety, dealing with emergency preparedness. These are the business outcomes. But sometimes we have a major disconnect between the business outcome we're trying to achieve and then the nitty-gritty of diving into the minutia of technologies and then talking about, should we use blockchain? Should we use AI? What problem are you trying to solve?
That's a great point. So, agencies need new ways to get a better handle on their data and innovation. To that end, would you tell us more about NTIS's joint venture partnership? What does it do, and how does it help federal agencies innovate through data?
That's really the beginning, kind of the secret sauce. We would not be able to accomplish some of the key successes that we've had without partnering with the private sector. So by law, we have an authority to enter into a joint venture partnership. And early in 2016, we had a Federal Register notice and solicited input from multiple organizations in both commercial, private sector, for-profit, not-for-profit, in very specific categories of data science and cybersecurity. Out of about 80 or so applicants, we narrowed it down to 31 really world-class organizations. These are the entities that we go to market with. They're the ones that really help achieve this capacity to scale. So the NTIS Joint Venture Authority, I view that as a valuable Department of Commerce asset. It's allowing us to work with the private sector firms in ways that are not possible under the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation. It's founded on collaboration between government and the private sector. And the partnerships that we have are inherently flexible, scalable, and powerful. And this authority allows us to innovate in the delivery of government data and data services. And I will get a little bit later on as to how we actually do this, but it's really through this authority that we're able to deliver services. And I would also mention that this is not what I would call a typical professional services model. Okay. In other words, there are other organizations that are able to deliver, data services, but typically you have to hire the right people. You have to get the right tools. You have to have the right operating environment. And when you have mission-critical requirements out there, under the president's management agenda and initiatives, you have to react very quickly. And frankly, the government doesn't react quickly. There's just a lot of inertia that's built in. So this is a new operating model that allows federal agencies to achieve this capacity to scale.
So how can federal agencies combine more data, leverage more emerging IT technologies and develop more powerful analytical capabilities?
So right now, agencies, I can see in my conversations with them, are struggling in that arena. From a technical perspective, they are looking for different ways to publish the data, to maybe develop application programming interfaces so it's easier to consume the data by others. They're trying different things. But as I mentioned before, it's always this issue of capacity to scale. I don't have the resources. It's not just about my data. It's actually about the data with other agencies, because the power of this data is when you connect it with data from other agencies. So I really believe that in the coming years, and maybe even sooner than later, there will be a strong recognition that you hear a lot about shared services. Maybe there's a requirement for shared services to create a government-wide enabling platform to help agencies to leverage that so that they can do a much better job of both documenting, collecting, processing, analyzing data, disseminating data. And if they're able to get access to some capabilities like that, and we can make some broad-based investments, then these agencies will be able to focus on their mission. They'll be able to look at their strategic plans. They'll be able to deliver business outcomes. And they'll be able to address the critical success factors that drive their agencies. And maybe, and I hope people don't get this the wrong way, but maybe get out of what I would call the IT infrastructure business that really sucks a lot of resources and energy. And the conversation needs to change.
Be sure to join me next time on the Business of Government Hour TV for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. Until then, it's businessofgovernment.org.